What's going on, y'all? It's Monday night. It is another reading video for you guys. My last video that I did like this, I read basically a part one of chapter one of my book, and this time we'll be doing part two of three. I'm going to read the last sentence that we left off with the previous video, just to remind you guys of where we are, and then continue on through wherever I'm going to stop this part for the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Tune in. I will be releasing many more videos. There are plenty of videos to watch as of right now, giving you guys some insight on my book, how my world works, how my story works, and yeah, just keep an eye out because I will be releasing many more videos, trying to get you guys excited for my story and my world that I want to bring to y'all. So without too much more introduction, let's go ahead and get into it. And just a reminder, I will read the last sentence that we left off with. As he tried to process this information, he ran into the heart of the village towards the tents designated as shelter for the sick. As he entered the string of tents, he noticed that a good portion of the people that were being treated before his journey were no longer there. After a thorough scan through the beds, he then asked Kazel, one of the tribe's medical shamans, how many people had recovered. Amon was told that out of the 28 people that had fallen victim to this illness, 2 individuals have made a full recovery and 8 have died. Receiving this tragic news, Amon retreated to his own tent to rest. For the remainder of the night, Amon couldn't sleep. In fact, even though he had just sprinted nonstop back to the village, running nearly 20 miles in the cold winter dawn, he felt as if he had all the energy in the world. Unable to sleep, his mind began replaying everything that happened since he entered the cave. Amon began to recount the phenomena that occurred from the moment he touched that strange gemstone when he had a sudden spark of inspiration, giving him an idea. He hopped out of his bed, grabbed his pelted sack that he held the gemstone, and re-entered the medical tent. He approached Kazel, the caretaker, and began to explain what had happened since he found the cave. Puzzled and obviously skeptical, Kazel requested he take a look at the gemstone. Amon grabbed it out of the sack and after removing it, noticed that there was a slight glow that came from the rush of energy he had been feeling. Kazel watched in astonishment, and although Amon carried the gemstone barehanded, after accounting for the story Amon told him, the cautious caretaker decided to touch the gemstone with only his finger. Upon touching it, the caretaker's eyes shot wide open, then immediately dropped to his knees, vomited, and passed out. In this moment, the other caretaker resting in a vacant bed, Namir, was jolted awake by the sudden commotion. Amon stood in the middle of the tent, mildly confused. He remembered the sensations he felt when he originally held the gemstone, and although he couldn't have seen how he looked himself, the reaction Kazel endured seemed more violent than what Amon went through. Plagued with guilt, Amon believed that he may have killed the caretaker, and after checking Kazel's pulse, the now alert Namir confirmed that Kazel was still alive. In fact, he had deemed that there was nothing life-threatening about his condition. However, he made a verbal note that Kazel looked as if he was suffering from extreme dehydration. Thankfully, Kazel had regained consciousness only a few hours after his initial contact with the stone. Shortly after he received a few servings of bread and plenty of water, he began to explain what he felt before losing consciousness. He admitted that there was an explosion of energy within his body. However, just as quickly as it happened, he described a feeling that made little sense to the others. It was as if every bit of moisture in his skin had been pulled from his body at once, along with all of his physical strength. Amon then advised him to touch the gemstone again and restated that the first reaction, although different from his own, was most likely what needed to happen in order to reap the benefits the gemstone brings. Despite seeing Amon's perfect physical condition, even watching him hold the gemstone without issue, Kazel was still hesitant to touch it a second time. The caretaker slowly approached Amon and touched the gemstone with the tip of his finger. Amon became shocked as beads of water began forming all over the stone, almost like it was a human starting to sweat. The beads slowly grew bigger and in a short time combined into a shell of liquid water around the gemstone. In his excitement, Kazel adjusted his wrist and placed his entire hand on the gemstone adjacent to Amon's. Namir let out a slight yelp as the water swelled, then in the blink of an eye, expanded to entrap Amon and Kazel within a floating sphere of raging water. Amon, surprised and unable to breathe, yanked the stone from Kazel's hands, causing the water to lose all momentum and strength, dropping to the floor as if dumped from a giant bucket. Amon coughed and gasped for air, completely astonished but somehow excited. Amon had an even more intense hunger to learn exactly what the stone was and how it worked. As he looked at the caretakers to see if they shared the same excitement, Kazel turned pale, eyes rolling into the back of his head, and collapsed. Namir then let out a second and more concerned shriek. The commotion of the experiment stirred some of the patients in the tent out of their sleep. This recent development only added to Amon's curiosity. After some time of comforting and easing the patients back to sleep, as well as settling Kazel into a bed of his own, Namir and Amon talked about the results of the experiment with the gemstone. Namir hypothesized that the stone's ability was the conversion of natural energy, converting the energy of humans and maybe other living things into resources, while also being able to convert surrounding resources into what living things need, like adrenaline, explaining Amon's newfound physical endurance. What did not make sense was Amon's ability to hold the stone with no visibly negative effects. Convinced that the secrets that lie within the gemstone may help revolutionize the world itself, as well as possibly cure the disease plaguing the Chpt, Amon sought to put his efforts into figuring out exactly what the stone does. Still brimming with energy and refusing to rest, Amon convinced Namir to continue the experiment with the gemstone. Kazel was still resting in one of the beds, and there was no telling when he would wake up. For the sake of the tribe and discovering whether this gemstone could save them, Namir decided to try his luck at touching the gemstone. As expected, when Namir placed the tip of his finger to the gemstone, he was met with the same swell of energy, and just as fast, he fell to the ground and fainted. As Amon observed, Namir remained unconscious for a little longer than Kazel. By this time, the sun already reached directly overhead. Once Namir was back on his feet and tended to some of the waking patients in the tent, Amon pleaded for Namir to continue. After giving in to the request, the two decided to migrate outside to the snow-covered open fields. Once they were out in the open, Namir then followed the other caretaker's example and touched the stone with one finger, but warned that he would make no attempt to grab the entire stone. Touching the stone, nothing happened. Afterwards, Amon raised an eyebrow at him. Namir expressed to Amon that he did feel a sensation traveling up his arm, but nothing visually developed. Suddenly, Amon let out a yelp and grimaced as he dropped the gemstone. As the stone hit the snow, the rock began to sizzle and melt the surrounding snow with pops and crackles. Amon then asked Namir if he had felt any heat coming from the stone. He replied that although the sensation of energy came with a warm feeling, he wasn't aware of any drastic changes in the temperature itself. With an idea, Amon fetched a large flat stone slab used for sharpening tools and, using a thin animal pelt to cover his hand, placed the gemstone on the slab. Namir then connected his finger to the stone again. He kept it there as the constant rush of energy filled his body. After a minute, Amon placed a piece of parchment he kept in his sack onto the gemstone, where it instantly caught fire. Namir snatched his hand from the stone, studying the flame. He slowly brought his finger close to the flaming parchment just before the fire went out, and described to Amon that although he felt the heat emanating from the fire, the intensity was as if the fire was several feet away. And that concludes part 2. Please let me know what you think so far. Let me know what your immediate reactions or responses to what's unfolding in chapter 1 is. Feel free to comment in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe, please. Helps out a lot. But thank you for tuning in. Make sure to keep your notifications on, because there will be a lot more releasing on my book, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much.